Hi drummers, hope you're well. Quick video for you here about straight and swung, what those words mean. Now these are words that get used by musicians all over the place and drummers. I think the word swing or swung in particular is a word that gets misused quite a lot. Often people just use it to mean something that's cool or funky or like busy or exciting. And I get why you would do that, like swinging. Like, I get why that means, like, that could mean something exciting, but it means something very specific when you're talking about a musical definition. Let's talk about it in terms of eighth notes here. I'm going to play some straight eighth notes on the snare drum. By straight, we mean evenly spaced out. If I play eighth notes or quavers, the notes that have one line joining them up, beaming them together on the page, I'd go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here are some straight eighth notes on my snare drum. Now, if I swing those eighth notes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the and each time, and I'm going to play it a bit later than it would normally be. So instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, I'm going to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here comes some swung eighth notes on my snare. So can you see there the and each time is just shifted to be a little bit later. It gives you that sort of lazier, lolloping, sort of groovier feel. I'm going to move now between straight eighths and swung eighths. Starting with a straight. Hopefully that all makes a bit of sense. Now I'm going to do it in terms of a groove here. If we play a straight eighth note groove, which hopefully by now we're familiar with, this will go like this. Hopefully you can hear and see there that those eighth notes that I'm playing on the hi-hat as part of this groove are played straight. Now if I swing those eighth notes on the hi-hat, we'll get this. So with the eighth note swing, hopefully that's fairly clear. That gives you a type of groove known as a shuffle, of course, most often. So eighth notes, straight and swung. When you really think about the swung feel, what it is it's triplets, as in 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, but with the middle note of the 3 missed out each time. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Drummers tend to count as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's what it's based on. Now, when you get to certain levels with drumming, the concept of 16th note swing comes in. This is a little bit more nuanced. If you get to about grade 5, if you're doing Trinity Rock and Pop, there's Sir Duke and there's that tune, the Prince tune, Musicology, and they have a 16th note swing to them. Let's think about how that might work. So regular 16th notes, 2 lines joining them up on the page, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Here comes some straight 16ths. Now, if I swing the 16th, it's going to be exactly the same principle. Every other note is going to be a bit later. It's going to give it that sort of shuffling along feel. So on 16th, if you're counting 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, this time it's the E and the that are going to be a bit later. Here are some swung 16ths. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Okay, I'm going to play some straight 16ths and some swung 16ths and move back and forth. 1, 2, E and a. Straight one first. Here we go. Hope this is making sense. Now I'll take that to a groove. In the simple version of this, I guess, your right stick would play the 16th notes themselves. So if you've played a groove that sounds like this. Well, that would be a 16th note groove, wouldn't it? A straight 16th note groove. Now, if we swing all those 16ths, that's going to give us this. Again, every other note played a little bit later. That's a groove often known as the half-time shuffle, right? So I'll move now between a straight 16th note groove and a half-time shuffle or swung 16th note groove. Here it comes straight. Now, the other thing with a 16th note swing thing, if you think about, like, Sir Duke's quite a good example, or in fact, musicology is also a great example of this. You've got often 8th notes played on the hi-hat, which won't be swung, but then elements of the groove itself, perhaps between the kick and the snare, typically, that will be swung. So remember, if you're doing 16th note swing, then the 8th notes will actually be unaffected. So let's play a groove like a sort of hip-hop type of groove. I'll play it straight first of all. There, everything was dead straight. The 8th notes were straight on the hi-hat, and some of the elements there with the kick were 16th notes, semi-quavers, and it was all straight. Now, if I give that groove some 16th note swing, that won't affect the hi-hat here, because the 8th notes in the 16th note swing are unaffected. It's the 16th that will swing. Here comes the same groove with some 16th note swing. Okay, to make the point here, I'm going to play that same groove, moving between straight 16th notes and swung 16th notes. Here we go. Remember, the 8s are steady all the way. Straight. And 16th note swing. And straight. Swing. Give another example here. Let's think about that groove that comes in if you do, again, Trinity Rock and Pop grades. Grade 3 has got a little tune, Dancing in the Moonlight. It's got this sort of beat to it. So there I'm playing dead straight. In the snare drum part there's some 16th note elements. There's some E's and some U's. So what I'm going to do is now swing that same groove. Check it out. 16th note swing. Hopefully you're getting the feel there. And this 16th note swing is a little bit more elusive and can take a bit more time to really get your head around. I'm going to play that groove, and I'm going to move between a straight 16th note feel and a swung 16th note feel. Here we go, straight first. Okay, hopefully this is all making a bit of sense. The one last thing to say about this is I'm presenting the idea here as if straight and swung are just two things, like it's a dichotomy, right? You're either straight or you're swung. I think that's quite a helpful way to think when you're first getting into all this. As you progress on the drums, and especially depending what style of music you get into, say that you're getting into jazz music in a big way, you realise there's degrees of swing. It's a scale from totally straight to totally swung, and actually there's a lot in between. I think when you start, it's quite helpful to think of these as two separate things, two ways of playing. The being able to play things on that scale from straight to swung comes a bit later. It's a really, really fun thing to think about and super helpful. I remember starting at music college quite a long time ago now, and the first tune that we did in the live performance section was The Thrill Is Gone, right? And it has this kick drum part. And I remember the tutor saying, play that kick drum part dead straight, no 16th note swing. What a lot of guys were doing was instinctively going, playing it with a swing feel. In other words, delaying that first kick drum hit a little bit. And it took a lot of time for some guys to figure that out. And I guess they hadn't really thought much in terms of straight and swing. And these were guys who'd been, going to music college. So it's a really cool thing to do, to think about this early and get it clear in your head, I think, straight and swung. The 8th note thing is pretty simple. 8th notes, straight, played swung. The 16th note thing, in principle, is as simple. Straight 16th, swung 16th, just sometimes the application in grooves when you're playing typically a straight 8th hi-hat but swinging in the 16th with a kick in the snare. That's when it gets a little bit tricky. But hopefully this puts you in the picture of it. Thanks a million. See you soon.